what happens then when you get that problem, your quality of life is going along like this, and it drops. I mean, if I get sick, at least for a short term in time, it's worse. And I spend all my time trying to get back up to where I was.
Mhm.
That's what solving a decision problem is. So you don't improve your life, you only get back to where it was.
Mm.
Decision opportunities is something, it's a decision, but I can create it. I can just be sitting here and think, what might improve? And what that does, your life's going along. You think of a decision opportunity, your life doesn't drop, it doesn't rise. But then when you pursue it, if you think of something to do, like that great trip, it's going to increase it. So
Mm.
decision opportunities enhance the quality of your life. Decision problems, hopefully at best, get it back to where it was.
Hi, Michelle Florendo here, and welcome to Ask a Decision Engineer. Listen in and find out how to untangle big decisions with less stress and more clarity. Decisions. They are the way we can steer our lives forward. Yet how much thought do people give to how they are making them? And more importantly, what are the small things we can do to improve them? Today, I go back to basics with global decision-making expert Ralph Keeney. Ralph is a professor emeritus of business administration at Duke University and a professor emeritus of industrial and systems engineering at the University of Southern California. He has written multiple books on decision-making, including Value-Focused Thinking, Smart Choices, and Give Yourself a Nudge. We talk about why it's worth putting thought into how you make decisions, the impact of shifting focus from decision problems to decision opportunities, the importance of defining your values in a decision, and some quick things you can do to improve your decision making. Enjoy the episode. I am so honored to welcome you, Ralph, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so excited you're on the show because I have to admit, this book, Smart Choices, has been on my shelf for probably more than a decade. I feel like I've heard your name so many times in these circles. You're a legend in the decision science space. And one of the things I appreciate about you is that even though you teach doctoral students, business, engineering, I know you're going to be going to a conference for this international, what is it? The Society of Multi-Criteria Decision Makers?
Yes.
Even though you teach people at that academic level, you also have a gift for making things accessible to people. I'm super excited that you can be on the show and my listeners will be able to benefit from your wisdom.
Well, it's again a delight, and also an interesting field to be in, decision making, of course.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you and I think about decision making often, daily, but it isn't something that many people take time to think about. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, why is it worth it for people to take some time to think about how they can improve their decision making?
I think the key point is very simple, but somewhat surprising. The only purposeful way anyone can influence anything in their life is through their decisions. That's it. And purposeful is a key word. You can certainly influence your life greatly by taking actions without thought, and we all know about them. Some of the consequences are good and some are pretty horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one doesn't consciously decide they would like to drive and speed when they're drunk, but
Mm-hmm.
they do that, and the consequences are often detrimental to themselves and sometimes to others, very detrimental. So that's why decision making is so crucial. It's the way you can influence and improve your life and the lives of others you care about, or your community, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I love this distinction that you're making between action and purposeful action, which is basically decisions, and putting that in the context of improving lives, our own, the one we care about, and our community as well. You know, we come from this academic background in decision making, but most people don't, right? And so how is it that you found most people learn to make decisions?
The way I think most people learned is basically they didn't learn it, but by trial and error. And it's
Mhm.
natural because you start making some little decisions when you're very, very young. You can't have a course when you're 2
Right.
and you're in a position and you can decide, well, do I want to go to my left and get the big blue ball, or go to the left and play with the swing or something? So there's thousands and thousands of trial and error decisions, and that's how one learns. Decision making is a skill.
Hmm.
And the way that we learn most skills when we're a little older is we find out what should one do to be able to perform what I'm talking about well. Examples can be playing any musical instrument, any sports that you'd like to play, tennis, whatever. If you want to be a great reader and retain things, there's skills to anything. A cook, you learn what the skills are, and then you have to practice.
Mm,
You could read every book that was written about tennis, and
right.
you could talk to world famous people if you had their availability, and they could tell you what you should do. And you're not going to be very good if you don't practice.
Right.
And that's how you get better. And that's what we should do with decision making. And that's what I teach about, is the learning part. And then
Right.
I say, but you've got to practice. And what I try to stress is the way you practice is kind of ideal for a skill. You practice on decisions worthy of thought to you.
Mm,
So the practice improves your decisions, but maybe not the greatest and the toughest decisions, but decisions that are worthy of thought. Now, what's that mean?
yeah.
If I have a decision where I'm going to spend 2 hours doing something, and there's different options to do that, and I want to enjoy it or something, maybe 5 minutes of thinking about, well, which one of those do I want to do? Let's say take a 2-hour hike in the middle of the day. 5 minutes might give me a lot better hike, so a much better 2 hours than not spending the 5 minutes. That's a reasonable investment. But the process is so relevant to all of your more important decisions also. That's
Mm,
practice.
okay. And so I think key takeaway here, decision making is a skill, which I think is such a gift because, again, it's something that anyone can learn. It's something that anyone can get better at. And you started going into a topic that sometimes people surface for me, and this piece around how should we think about how much time and effort to put into the various types of decisions we face?
Yeah. Just making one comment on the learn. It isn't that we learn decisions or don't. It's just like any of the sports.
Right.
All of us can get better. I can certainly learn additional things, and I do. One of the things I like about being in this field
Yeah.
that might really help me on a future decision that's kind of crucial.
Mm-hmm.
So we can all improve. So it's a learning process. It isn't like there's a fixed amount to learn. And
Not as if we've made it once we've reached the mountaintop. Excellent decision maker.
yes, and so I just
Yeah.
wanted to stress that point too. And what was your quick question? Or
Well, I mean, just to recap what you had said, it's a journey, right? And it's a
yes,
journey through continuing to engage in these decisions that are worthy of thought. But that
yes.
worthy of thought piece is a question that sometimes people ask me. How do I think about which decisions are actually worthy of thought and how much thought?
Well, I think the example I gave is a little bit how I think about it.
Mhm.
I mean, more important decisions are worth an awful lot of thought. If you have a critical, life-threatening medical decision on cancer and you have the time and you mentally you're there and you can get some help, you'd like to get some information if there are different alternatives and make the best choice of the maybe, let's say, 3 or 4 alternatives you could. So there, I mean, even a few days or more, you might talk to a few experts to get their judgments and really push them to understand the decision you have to make much better. But then for the decisions, like I said, a 2-hour hike,
Mhm.
maybe 5 minutes is reasonable, because the trade-off, how much time I should make on the decision and how I should make it is itself a decision. Not that you want to go analyze that. I don't
Mhm.
want to, but the time is reasonable, and it's typically roughly, I think, of how much time can I spend that I think is going to improve a longer time when I'm actually pursuing that decision. And that's a way that helps me think about it, and it at least bounds it. Like, I don't want to spend a day thinking, where will I go on a 2-hour hike?
Right.
I'd rather just go enjoy that day doing anything, and I'm much better off. So it's nowhere near 2 hours for a 2-hour hike.
Okay.
But again, 5 minutes, and especially typically we all have 5-minute periods that aren't too important. We're not doing anything. We're waiting for somebody to show up. You're standing there. You got the time.
Yeah. And so one way to think about it is what is the magnitude or the length of impact of this decision? And then also this piece around, even in 5 minutes, even if it's just a few minutes, there's an opportunity to improve that decision. So that's where I want to start getting into the how, because one of the big contributions you've made to this field is really focusing on values. So this value focused thinking type of frame. So could you tell me more about, well, first off, how is that different from how people usually approach decisions?
I think the way people that I've observed usually approach decisions is a decision problem occurs. I mean, I feel sick. Now I have to do something. And they think, well, what can I do? I can go to a doctor A, maybe to a location nearby where they can check on me B, or just wait. So the first thinking on decision problems for most people is, what are the alternatives? Because you got to choose one to, quote, solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And I observed that, and that was never the way I naturally thought. My first thinking, given I have a decision problem or any decision to face, I think, what do I care about here? Because the only reason I'm making any decision is I care about what happens. That's it. And I define values because I wanted to have a word that was distinct. I didn't want objectives that sounds technical, although that's a specific way to state a value. So I use the word values. And value-focused thinking means think about what you care about for a decision first, because that's why you're even bothering to think about it. And then you can also use that to create better alternatives, because you know what you want those alternatives to do. I think most decision making that people pick up by habit is backwards. They think of, how can I solve my problem? I want to get over with it. That's okay that they do that, but they do much better if they think, why is this decision worth even bothering to make? What do I care about? And that's my definition of values in this context.
Right. I can see how this piece that you just talked about, just pausing, even for a few minutes to think about, what do I care about, can even solve that question before around how much time should I spend on this decision? Because if someone doesn't really care, then it doesn't require that much thought.
Right. And sometimes when you think of values, and this has happened to me, I think of one value for a decision that I had not thought of. And then instantaneously it happens. Okay, I know what to do. I didn't even create the alternatives. I mean, there are possibilities in there, not the most complex problem. And you just know, like, suppose you have an opportunity to do something or not, somebody asks you, and you're thinking through, and a trivial one, you think, what are your values? I mean, not to cause inconvenience for others might be one. And you might think, oh my gosh, if I do that, that's really going to cause an awful lot of inconvenience to someone that you talked to about something before. And so okay, no, I don't want to do this. So it would be solved by that one value. You don't have to analyze it, and we might get to things. In fact, the vast majority of decisions are not analyzed, and it's not worth it.
Right.
And people can't do it.
I think that's really worth people hearing. Because I think sometimes people go down this rabbit hole of, I need to make the right decision, the best decision all the time. But if we approach things from this values perspective, again, it's something that we can quickly do, even just in a few minutes.
Yes.
Now, another thing that you talk about when talking about this value focus in decision making is it unlocks this ability to look for decision opportunities instead of the decision problems we often respond to. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, it's one way to create decision opportunities. First, I should define it.
Okay.
A decision problem, as I define it, usually occurs to you without you taking any action specifically to cause it. I mean,
So
if
it's
I
like
get
something
sick,
external.
yes,
that is
if
out
I
there.
get sick, I have a decision problem.
Mhm.
If I'm released from my job, I have a decision problem. If I have children and one's doing poorly in school, I've got a decision problem. The car doesn't run, you got a decision problem.
Mhm.
You're doing an interview with somebody like we're doing now, or a discussion, and they don't show up. Now you have a problem. So all those are problems, and they're typically caused by external circumstances.
Mhm.
And what happens then when you get that problem, your quality of life is going along like this, and it drops. I mean, if I get sick, at least for a short term in time, it's worse. And I spend all my time trying to get back up to where I was.
Mhm.
That's what solving a decision problem is. So you don't improve your life, you only get back to where it was.
Mhm.
Decision opportunities is something, it's a decision, but I can create it. I can just be sitting here and think, what might improve something that I care about in my life? Again, for myself, for someone else, certainly for your children.
Yeah.
And you might think of a great idea. Now, how to implement that idea? Like you might think, COVID's been such a mess and it's very difficult on the family. I'd like to do something that's going to have the whole family have a great time together that we haven't had for 2 years.
Mhm.
That's a decision. Decide what to do. Now, what are the real objectives? What's a great time together mean? And obviously some things like cost would be a part of that, but interest and enjoyment, and everybody gets a benefit who's going, all the family members.
Mhm.
Those are the values. You can specify them then as objectives, and
Right.
then you think through and create some alternatives, and then you choose one. And what that does, your life's going along, you think of a decision opportunity, your life doesn't drop, it doesn't rise. But then when you pursue it, if you think of something to do, like that great trip, it's going to increase it.
Mhm.
So decision opportunities enhance the quality of your life. Decision problems, hopefully at best, get it back to where it was
Mhm.
before the problem occurred.
What I'm hearing here is that if we think about decisions more proactively, as opposed to just responding to the decision problems that come to us externally, we have more of an opportunity to improve our lives as opposed to just getting back to
More
whatever
of it
plateau we were
meaning
at.
an opportunity.
Oh, and
Yeah,
yes.
you're absolutely correct about that. And again, the only way to purposefully influence your life is through your decisions. So create some decision opportunities where that will occur.
Mhm. Like I love this reframe because sometimes there are a lot of listeners who listen to this podcast because they feel a certain level of stress or anxiety around decisions, often because they are encountering or thinking about decision problems. But this reframe around decision opportunities really allows people to focus on what's really empowering about decisions, like our ability to not just respond to the external world, but really articulate what we care about and then create opportunities to possibly enhance that.
Yes. And sometimes decision opportunities, you can have one. I've noticed I have a lot of problems of this sort. A decision opportunity would be decide what I could do that would lessen the number of those negative problems that show up,
Mm-hmm.
or degrade how bad the consequences can be when they do show up. Now, a trivial case is somebody who typically maybe has minor health illnesses, and it's due to some of the habits they have.
Mm.
So maybe they wish to consider whether they'd like to quit having some of those habits. It happened some years ago, published a paper, and I analyzed all the deaths in the United States in a year. Over half of the deaths could have been avoided had the person taken some reasonable actions ahead of time. I mean, and it, it runs, I mean, the obvious ones, don't drunk drive. I mean, make a decision, you're not going to do that, period.
Right.
That can clearly, no one's going to come up to you probably and say, you've got a decision, you got to decide that. I mean, it might happen sometime if you're on your fourth case and somebody in court tells you that, but in general, it's you characterizing the problem. Smoking and obesity are tremendous contributions to death. And they're under the control mostly of the individual who has that condition or habit.
And so that seems like like a very real and very concrete example of the benefits of what would be possible if we looked more for those decision opportunities as opposed to just waiting for the decision problems.
Absolutely. I mean, and they're everywhere, and no one can limit your choice of decision opportunities.
Yeah. I did want to actually get to one of your other books. So this is your most recent book. And
that's the one that takes the ideas from value-focused thinking. And it includes kind of 30 years of learning and practicing and thinking and really realizing there's not going to be much analysis of very many problems.
Right.
And that's true. And I even asked the Society of Decision Professionals, who has all professional decision analysts, how many complete decision analyses have you done of a personal decision in your life? And I define complete, and it's typically a big utility function and get all the probabilities laid out and maybe have a model to help specify them. And the average was about 10 in their whole life. And that's about what it is for me, because I understand decisions reasonably well, and very few are worth all that effort.
Right.
And where the time goes, and people, you asked me earlier about time on decisions, it goes in gathering the data, building the models, running them, analyzing them, and it's really tough. But the key is the front end, and that's what Give Yourself a Nudge really stresses.
Yeah.
The 3 keys, and anybody can do them. What is the decision you want to address? Be clear about it. Often people address the wrong decision. Then once you've got that clear, what are the values you have for it? And then convert those into an objective. Because anything you care about, then you say, well, why do you care about it? And you get to an objective, which I want a natural structure for that of a verb and an object, like minimize cost, maximize fun. Might be tough to measure fun, but if it's important, it's important.
Right.
So have it down there. And the family trip, have it good for child 1, child 2, parent 1, parent 2. And all of that, because the consequences will be somewhat different on them. And you want it good for everybody. So then you lay those out, and then you create the alternatives. Now at that stage, you're in pretty good shape to think through what you need. Maybe you need a little data, like if it's a trip that you're taking for a week, cost might be important. Well, then you check how much would each of these trips cost, something like that. And you do that, and you're just in great shape. I refer to those 3 steps as the front end, and they're typically neglected because as we talked before, people bail in with, I got a decision problem. What's an alternative? The first one comes up. Oh yeah, I could do that. That'll do it. That's not going to lead to the best of decisions. So those 3 steps are really crucial.
Yeah. Well, so this is, I think, really useful for people to hear, because again, sometimes when I talk about the fact that there is an entire field of decision science and you can have these big models and analyses, people's eyes glaze over. But what I'm hearing you say is, even if you just complete these 3 steps at the front end, defining what is the actual decision, being clear about your values, turning them into objectives, and then using those to think more concretely about what is the option set, the alternatives you might pursue, that even just that can produce a material difference in the decision.
And even more than that, any tiny component of those 3 make a difference. And I have a quick example everybody can understand to see it. Imagine somebody really well known but you had not personally met them, was coming to town, but you had some connection and you'd love to meet them. They might be in your professional field, they might be from a firm where you'd like to work, or maybe they were somebody you just always thought highly of. And they were coming for this meeting on a Thursday, and your friend, whatever, checked, they'd be happy to have dinner with you on Wednesday evening. You were excited. You found out where they were staying. You went down to the hotel and asked the concierge, well, what you wanted was, very good food, some local cuisine, and near the hotel for convenience to the person.
Yeah.
So you asked the concierge, do you have a place like this? And they said, oh yeah, it's Joe's 2 blocks away. Famous, been here a long time, it's great. When Wednesday night comes, you meet this individual there and you go in, and the dinner was great. It was excellent food, just like you were told. And the evening was a disaster. And what happened is it was way too noisy, and you didn't get to have a good conversation. You didn't learn much about them. They hardly know who you are. It ended right after dinner, and that was it. Now, had you carefully defined your decision at the beginning, the main decision was to have a great discussion and know the person. And you might have said, in a location that has food. Had you done that, you never would have ended up there. Just that one thing.
Yeah.
Recognizing that. And suppose that didn't happen. Secondarily, you laid out your objectives and you wanted it to be a place you could really have a discussion. Well, then you wouldn't have chosen it had you at least stuck your head in one of the nights before. You would have typically noticed that, or maybe the concierge wouldn't have suggested it had you stated that one objective to the concierge. And then third, don't have one alternative. The concierge obviously knows 4 restaurants in the area. At least ask for 4. And if I had that decision, I would have gone a night before. It would take me 10 minutes if they're in the area, maybe 15, but this one would be worth that time.
Right.
Stick your head in and find out which ones seem the best. And maybe even choose your table, see if you could get the table. I mean, you sit in the right place that things go better.
Yeah.
Any of those 3 things, just one element there, would help tremendously and avoided a disaster and flipped it. No analysis, no even complete structure. And each of those are a piece of information relevant to have you make a better decision. That's what I call a nudge. And it comes from, Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein's book. They use the word nudge, and it's somebody else giving you a little push on your decision. So, but this is, most decisions, there's nobody to push you.
Right.
So my thought was, this is the same notion where you push yourself, not do analysis necessarily. You just give yourself a little push. And that just has a tremendous amount of impact there. So that's what I define as a nudge. And it's obviously a mental push. It's not a physical push.
Right.
But it's the exact same notion.
Yeah. Well, I know your book is full of all of these different types of nudges. I guess, what might be another nudge that you would offer the audience when they're thinking about their decisions? Maybe especially for people who are really obsessed with just finding the best option. Are decisions necessarily always just about finding the best option, or are there other ways they can improve?
I would say that would be a decision to think about. Because you have a decision. Do you always want to go for the best? And I would think, because of the time, I don't want to. In fact, one of the best things that nudges can do, and even analysis, is eliminate the poor alternatives. Because if you have a big corporate decision and there's 3 or 4 sequential things, I mean, there's the equivalent of, 50 different alternatives in there. If you can get rid of all the bad ones, which is easier to do, because one's bad if it's worse than only one other. It doesn't, so you can easily, if there's a lot of alternatives, the easier it is to get rid of some. and you whittle them off because you get a few objectives and they say, well, 7 of these alternatives are pretty miserable on that one, and they go out. And even in the restaurant one, you put down the objective, I'd like it quiet enough to have a quality discussion. Boy, you could get rid of a lot of alternatives. Well, now, once you come down to the final 3 that weren't too bad, none of them aren't too bad. And it's maybe not worth spending an awful lot of time on that. So the tremendous value is a bigger value is avoiding poor alternatives rather than getting the absolute best. I mean, if somebody offers or something, it would be absolutely terrific, and another one really terrific. Really terrific isn't too bad. And if it takes me a long time to figure out which of those 2 is it,
It's more
it's
terrific.
not worth it. Take the really terrific, and then I got a lot more time to do other things that might be enjoyable or worthwhile or productive or helpful.
Yeah. Such good practical advice, because again, like you said, we often don't have time to find the best, and we are engaging with so many decisions, but these little nudges here and there can really make a marked difference.
And yet, and also, we don't have the skills, and often we couldn't get the information even if we had the time and the skills.
Right.
That's going to differentiate all those.
Mhm.
So I think you're right. I mean, what I would like to think I'm promoting is ideas and useful thoughts that people could really understand and use and improve if they practiced and just used them on their own decisions, and would get a little bit better, as opposed to learn decision analysis, because even if they do and learn it very well, they're going to use it on 10 decisions in their whole life.
Right.
So if somebody says it's worth me to really learn decision analysis, if you're going to work professionally and use it on some things and earn part of your living by that, sure. If you're not, it's probably better to learn fewer things, and on a few specific problems, maybe learn more. I mean, if you have, again, a serious cancer case, that's when you want to learn as much as you can about it, and that's when I would spend that time and effort.
Yeah. I love this, because again, it's making some of the concepts from this field readily applicable and digestible and relevant for people, the broader audience.
That's what I would say, and the broader is about 1 million times larger, because decision analysis is general. No structured decision technique is taught most places.
Right.
And then the practice part isn't there, even if that happens.
Right.
Even in universities, taught by somebody who, read the book.
Yeah.
Or took the text, and that's what they're teaching, what's in the text.
Mm-hmm.
You got to practice. And when I teach this, at least in a course in the university, I have the students work on their own decisions.
Mm-hmm. Because those are the ones that are readily available that we are making often.
Right. Well, and hopefully, and maybe not so often, but they're important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one, I've asked, a bunch of doctoral students what their objectives are to do the decision of what their dissertation should be. The number, tremendous evidence on all kinds of problems. People can't come up with all their objectives. I have the same.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin said that in a letter in 1773 to a colleague, that's why decisions are tough. And it's that is copied, and give yourself a nudge.
Yeah. So
anybody could find it there. And he just said, at one time, have some of your, he didn't use the word objectives, but on the same word, essence, same idea, in your mind. And at another time, you'll forget some of those, and others are in your mind. I mean, they would overlap. And that's one of the reasons it's so tough to do all this. Mm-hmm. And so he had a way to kind of lay them out and structure them. So to even write them down and get a list, so you got, is extremely useful.
Right.
i.e., step 2 of the 3 steps. What's your decision? What's your objectives? What are the alternatives?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that listeners are inspired by these little nudges that they've learned from you that they can implement and practice with because they're so accessible. And I know practice is really important when it comes to developing this skill. And I know that there are people out there who still freeze up because they are uncomfortable with making decisions in the face of uncertainty. And so I'm curious, what advice would you offer them?
Well, I don't think that's unnatural. I mean, one would like the resolution of the uncertainty and to know everything that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That cannot occur. What you can do, you can break knowing about uncertainty into two steps. One is to represent the uncertainty. Like you might say, you go on this particular route, there's a 10% chance I will not make it to where I need to be at a certain time, 90% chance that I do. But you're never going to know what the outcome is with all the alternatives. Another alternatives may have, let's say the 10% was you're an hour late. Another one may have 20% that you're late, but you're late by half an hour. And, there are trade-offs. How long were you late and how likely were you late? And there's two objectives and you might be balancing those. So you might know that, but you're not going to have that where you know what the consequence was. You'll have to make the decisions with the uncertain. Understanding it may be worthwhile to do, but then conceptually, there's one thing. Some people say, well, I hate uncertainties. I want to know everything. And we had a short discussion about this. If you knew everything, there's no uncertainties. You know what's going to happen in the next hour in your life. Every single thing about it. And how enjoyable it is and how maybe not enjoyable it was. And you'd know about the next time. You'd know every experience you had in your future with your child, with your family, with your life. You'd be bored. You would even know how you felt in those situations. So just going through life would just be telling you what you already knew or offering you what you already knew. So I think of life as really the resolution of those uncertainties and the consequences of how they resolve. What you can do and what decisions do is improve your chances with each of your decisions on better outcomes leading to a better life. And that's nice to have that opportunity. And it is exciting to see the implications of your decisions and enjoy that life and see what opportunities are in the future and think of which ones to pursue and then pursue them.
Yeah.
That's what life is.
Right. Because clairvoyance would be, like you said, really boring because it would be a life just resigned to fate, predetermined, no decisions.
Yeah, and predetermined. I mean, you just think of any terrible thing in the future and it happens in 4 months and 2 days. And you're sitting here today and think, that's going to happen in 4 months and 2 days, 4 months and 1 day. And I know how I'm going to feel when it comes. And I'm, that isn't what we think of as life.
Right. So life is about the resolution of this uncertainty and our ability to make decisions to continue to influence how it goes.
Yeah, that's what the decision part is.
Any parting words for my listeners as we wrap things up here?
Well, I think just a key thing is anyone who's listening can certainly improve their decision making. It's not going to take them forever. Will have some payoffs really pretty quickly. For instance, if you learn how to carefully think about what you care about in a decision and your objectives, after an hour, you'll have some insight about that and it will influence the way you think. 1 hour. Then the decision kind of focuses and you think, oh, maybe I ought to try that here. I'm just sitting here waiting for somebody to come to coffee for half an hour. What are the values I have for this? And you might think of one and say, that really helps. And even if you're waiting for coffee, what do I hope to achieve in this meeting? And that's not selfish. I mean, you want them to have a good time. You're maybe there to even help them. They've had a bad time and you think through, well, what does that mean to help them? That's general. You get a little more specific and in 15 minutes they come and you do a couple things that really helps them. Yeah. And they're so happy and you realize, had I not spent a little thinking there, I might not have done that. And then you think, "Ooh, that's maybe not a terrible idea." Another decision comes along sometime. You got some time to think, and all of a sudden, you can do that. And the same is with coming up with an additional better alternatives. And when you have a few more objectives, or like one more, you can often eliminate some poor alternatives and help identify what is good one. Like the example where I said a quiet place for dinner. That one thing can influence a lot. And then you see, gee, this again is not taxing me too much at all. And it really has some nice consequences. And then it's easy to get better because you realize I'm saving time and having a better time by doing these few rather straightforward, simple things. So I'll continue to do it, and then you'll get better and better, and life will, in general, be better.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all these different nuggets on how people can just expend a little bit of energy to have better lives for themselves, people around them, their communities, and beyond.
Well, thank you. It's certainly been a delight to be here, and I hope some of the listeners do find that to be the case and do practice a little, and maybe they'd even, when they do, send you a note and tell you that they did, which would be nice.
And I'll pass that along to you when they do. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you heard something today that you found helpful, please share this episode or write a review. Also, if you're interested in more resources on how to make decisions with less stress and more clarity, like my quick start guide for untangling big decisions or the decision-making courses I teach, check out the show notes or go to askadecisionengineer.com to sign up for the mailing list. Be sure to check out the other episodes this season. Next week, you'll hear from Dawn Moore, a UC Berkeley Haas School of Business professor and expert on overconfidence. We'll talk about how to properly calibrate your confidence in decision-making, as well as how leaders can empower others to make better choices. Again, this is Michelle Florendo from Ask a Decision Engineer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.